Welcome to the Rookies Podcast, where we're three rookie pastors talking about life and ministry and all the things we don't know in ministry. I'm joined by Colin Coffey and Daniel Razor, and today we have a very special guest, Pastor Clint Pressley from Hickory Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Clint currently serves also as our president of the Southern Baptist Convention. Clint, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. Appreciate you asking me.
We're glad to have you on here. So we record on Monday, so we always like to ask, how was your Sunday? So Clint, would you just tell us a little about you, your church, and what you're preaching through right now?
Okay, so which of those questions you want me? You hit me with two. How's my Sunday and what am I preaching through?
Same thing. How was your Sunday and what are you preaching through? Just hit both of them.
Yeah. Sunday was good as far as I know. We go back and forth. So we got 3 services on Sunday at 2 different locations. And so it felt like a pretty good crowd by way of, who was there. I don't think I said anything heretical. I feel like the worship went really well. Our prayer times were tied to the songs and the worship. So we would call that a good day on the back end of Sunday morning. Then we had our night of worship last night at our Mallard Creek campus. So it went really well as well. It just made for a long day, as you guys know. But yeah, that was good. I am preaching right now, just sort of skipping over through Colossians, like about an 8-week series, because I preached through the Gospel of Mark, and I came up short on the 2-year mark. We got done at the end of October. So I didn't want to start another book. I tried to do that in January. And so we took an 8-week approach to Colossians. That'll take us through to the end of the year.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good Sunday. I feel like not preaching heresy is the bar we all should shoot for.
Yeah, right. I mean, I studied the Bible, try to tell people this is what it means. So we read the Bible, explained the Bible, and applied the Bible. And if you do that, you've had a good Sunday.
Hey, amen to that. Well, yeah. Clint, one of my favorite memories of you is when you came to preach for me here or when I was at Verdigris, Oklahoma, and it was the second year you had done it for me. And so we went to Daniel's church together to kind of surprise him and see him. And I will never forget the look on your face when we walked into this room in Daniel's church and they were playing Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering together. Clint, what was your reaction to that when you saw that?
I was completely stupefied. What are they doing? Number one, it looks like everybody in the room just got out of bed. I mean, there's not a comb that's been run through one person's hair in that room. A couple of them had on, what are those, not the flip-flops, what are those shoes called? They're plastic. You see, Crocs? Crocs. So some of them wearing Crocs around. I was like, how can this be the future of the Southern Baptist Convention? So after going in that room, that's when I decided this day, I'm going to run for president for the Southern Baptist Convention.
I've played my part. I've done it.
Yep. Yes, you have, son. Yes, you have. Look, and while I'm talking, would you take that Southern vest off you got on right now? If we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, can you put a piece of tape over that?
We'll just hide it for a little bit, but I wear them both proud. And you're talking about that, but I've shared it's one of our most flourishing ministries, if I'm allowed to call it that.
You did right with the air quotes there. You did right with air quotes.
We call it the Ministry of Magic, and it's a flourishing ministry.
Lord have mercy,
at Faith
Daniel.
Baptist Church.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I don't think Clint's going to come back on this podcast now.
No, probably not. My bad.
Well, let's get to the topic that we wanted to talk to Clint about, aside from Dungeons and Dragons. I got to share that memory. The look on your face, Clint, was priceless. I wish I would have taken a picture of it or something.
I wish I could forget it.
Well, anyway, Clint, one of the things that I think all three of us admire about you is, number one, you're a great preacher, and we all enjoy listening to you. But through your social media posts and all that stuff too, we also see that there's a commitment in your life to staying physically and spiritually healthy as a pastor.
Yep.
And we're about to enter 2025. A lot of people are going to make New Year's resolutions to get fit. And in ministry, it can often be hard to do that because of how much time is taken up. So we just kind of want to pick your brain on how you would prioritize spiritual and physical health in the coming year and how you do that in your own life. So could you maybe give us just a rundown of what a normal day looks like for you?
Okay. Yeah, I try to have some pretty hard rails at the beginning and at the end of the day. So every day is a 5 a.m. day except for Saturday. Saturday, I may sleep till 6:30 or so. I don't set an alarm. So you usually wake up. You get older, you're waking up early. So get up in the morning, 5 o'clock, plug the percolator in. It makes coffee. I go out there, walk the dogs, come back, and coffee's made. Sit down in my chair, and we'll read the Bible and pray from then until about 6:30. 6:30, go outside. I have all my equipment out in the garage. And 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll lift weight for about an hour. If it's after January, I'll probably do something else on Tuesdays and Thursdays if I'm training for something. But typically just like to lift Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then by 8:30, I'm in the office and starting the day. As you know, after that point, your schedule is not really your own. The pastor, what is your own is around from the time you get up around 5 to the time you show up, whether it's at the office or everybody else's workday begins. So you can have a plan, and I do try to have a plan for each day, but those plans are pretty flexible during the day, except for Thursday mornings and Tuesday mornings. I try to devote all of my time those mornings for studying for Sunday. Tuesday morning is an open door studying. Thursday is pretty much all the doors are closed. People can come to me, but there need to be something really going on. And then Friday, usually not in the office. I'm at home. I don't study much on Friday. Saturday morning, I'll go over all of my notes from working that week and make sure I have my outline together. Then spend the day Saturday with Connie, and then around 2 o'clock, I'll go into my study at home. Well, I got a little office at home, and I write a manuscript out. So write out my sermon that Saturday from 2 to about 6. It's about 4 hours. I don't have any small children, so I can do this. And then after writing my sermon, I eat a big breakfast for supper every Saturday night. It's usually bacon and eggs and grits and orange juice. And then 8:30 or so, I go to bed. Then Sunday morning is a 4 a.m. day. Get up, go over it for 2 hours. So I got it down pat. Then I'm at the church by 6:45, and then we start, everybody's there to pray. Then church starts at 8, and so I'll preach it 3 times and then go home and relax. In the evening, before I go to bed, I try to read every night from 8:30 or 9 till around 10. So if I can be in bed and then at 10 o'clock, I usually will listen to something on Audible, but I don't count that in the reading category, but I'll listen to something there. I mean, Audible is somebody reading to me. It's not me actually reading it. Anyway, I try to get probably 6.5 or so hours of sleep each night.
So I know we asked for a normal schedule, but I'm sure people listening will be interested too. How has being president of Southern Baptist Convention maybe affected that weekly rhythm?
Yeah, it's completely thrown a wrench in it because I'm not accustomed to traveling so much. And so, for instance, had the opportunity to go out to California and preach at Gateway Seminary. It was a great privilege, and they're doing a great job out there. But to do that, it is a long travel day getting there and a long travel day coming back. So you not only lose those 2 days in the week, you also are really set up for failure for the next day. So it becomes a 3-day process, which I'm glad to do. It's just learning how to do things on the road. There's some guys that preach all the time like that. I've had to learn how to do it. So my assistant will run off all these hard commentary copies. I got all these papers in a folder in my briefcase. And so on the plane, when I'm traveling, man, I'm flipping through papers. It's everywhere. I'm writing stuff down, trying to learn to study on the road.
I want to follow up on the reading time you have each day. How does that help you as a pastor and just spiritually and mentally when you spend that time reading? I see you reading next to a fireplace. How could that not be a good time with your dog?
Yeah.
But
right. So trying to think of it like this: in the mornings, you open God's word, you see his promises, you read the Bible, it feeds your soul, you think of the sovereignty of God in all things, what you're going to face this day. That becomes sort of the strength of the day, looking at the sovereignty of God. And then in the evening, I typically am reading some form of history or biography, and that's where you look back. So you're looking back and see the providence of God in all things, how he has worked all things in his creation. So I'm reading these guys that may or may not have been Christians, but with the understanding if God is sovereign, he is using all of that, ordering the events of the world. And so you have your day started with sovereignty, ended with providence. It helps me just balance out. There are a couple other things too. You read some of these leaders, Christians or not, that's usually who I'm reading, and throughout history, and you see the things that they face, the problems that they dealt with, the rising of empires, the decline of empires. It helps put some of the stuff we, deal with as pastors in perspective.
So can I ask, what are you currently reading, like in the evenings?
So I'm in the epilogue of this book. I just finished a book on the Habsburgs. It's called The Habsburgs in Mexico. It's the second Mexican empire by Maximilian. I didn't know anything about it. but it's dropped into the context of the American Civil War, brings in France and Spain, and then all of the Austrians, the Habsburgs. It was really something. I did not expect to like that book like I did. It was a great book. Picked up the other night, I put a picture of reading a book with Spurgeon, my dog, the beagle, laid by the fire. And I was just reading one volume of Winston Churchill's The History of the English-Speaking People. It was The Rise of Britain. I really was reading that just to read how he wrote. So you read, 50 pages of that. I don't know that he was the greatest historian. It was helpful to hear how he described the beginning of Britain from his perspective in the 1950s.
I mean, that's one thing that's surprising having our conversation previously. I haven't dove into a lot of history books. And so that's fascinating to me.
Because you're playing Dungeons and Dragons all the time.
That's true. I'm in the fiction area of history.
So honestly,
I
mean, I wish you guys would start doing that. It's really something.
And I think that's just yesterday. I had a church member come up to me and ask if I could give her any kind of recommendation on history that is extra biblical. Like, she was asking what's going on in the world while these events in Jesus's life are happening, or the events in the exile. And so that's one thing I'm my project this week is to find some history books for her to look at.
Wow.
Any ideas there?
Yeah, I mean, you've gone into ancient history. Now we're reaching back. So we go before you get Romans, and you get back to the Greeks, and now you've gone to the Persians. Yeah, that's going to be harder to find, and I hadn't spent much time there. I mean, once you get past the Persians, I don't know, just as soon read the Bible. You know what I mean? Right.
There's history there. We'll take it.
Yeah. I'm just not sure. I haven't read much of that.
Sure.
No,
just curious.
Clint, I'll say this, that I look at your Instagram, see what books you're reading through, and I'm starting to make my way through The Demon of Unrest, which is one that you posted. Man, that one's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of the week. It's been a phenomenal read. And
what happened is you read that and you get pulled into the Civil War. So now you want to follow the storyline of the Civil War, and you pick up all kinds. I mean, there are all kinds of books about the generals, about the battles, about all that it went into going up to the Civil War, coming out of the Civil War. That's a great place to spend a lot of time.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed it. So I am trying to read history because I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. So, which is, where I'm trying to make my hobby, Daniel.
The thing about Dungeons and Dragons, if you're playing, there is some proclivity to medieval. There's something that you connect with in medieval England. So go back over there, read that history. That's where the fascination is. So I can appreciate the fact, if you pull the fantasy out and somebody will comb the hair, I can appreciate the fact that at least you're looking back at something.
I'm shocked you know that much about Dungeons and Dragons right there. There is a medieval tone to it.
Right. So if there is, brother, let's put that down, because the medieval history that is underneath all of that fiction is unbelievable. I can give you some books on that.
I mean, at its core, a lot of it comes from Tolkien.
No. Okay, that's right.
There you go. We can agree on that, right? A lot of it comes from Tolkien, which is one of the best writers, I think.
Right.
Let me shift gears for a second, because
please do.
Colin asked about some books. Yeah, you're welcome. I want to ask just about the fitness aspect of it, because that's one thing I think that, and just from you in our conversation previously, and then just how you post regular about what you're lifting and those kind of things. But how would you encourage a pastor or just any kind of listener who doesn't have any experience weightlifting, or maybe doesn't even have motivation to begin lifting? How would you encourage them to be more physically active? Is there anything you can say, try this or this? What do you think?
Yeah. A couple of things. One is, don't overthink any of that. I believe in the simplest, you can bring it as simple as possible to let's just talk about lifting weights for a little bit. Just some real basic movements. They're going to help you with long-term strength over the course of your life. So things like a pressing movement, picking something up, putting it over your head, a deadlift, picking it up off the floor, or a squat. And those three areas, just take a press, a squat, and a deadlift. And if you work on those three for 30 minutes, 3 times a week, and you make sure that you're not eating more than you're spending, you're going to see some sort of change in your body composition and in your strength level. Along the way, you can add and subtract. I've done it several years, any kind of cardio that you like. If you want to do that, I think the untapped place of keeping long-term health for pastors, I wish they would do is some sort of intense weightlifting. Something that, and I don't want to hear guys talk about wanting to be getting toned or that sort of stuff. That's fantasy talk. I'd like for you to talk about getting strong, work towards strength. And then if you're trying to shape up, then it's a mathematical problem. Like if you're a fat kid, you got a refrigerator problem. So stop opening that refrigerator door. And if you can expend more than you're taking in, mathematically, you're going to lose some weight.
And you've got guys that you memorize scripture with that work out with you. So how do you use that time?
Yeah, so it depends on, like we're memorizing, like we'll start in January, probably go memorize Colossians. So we'll do 2 to 3 verses a week. And then Friday you show up and you just quote it. You quote it, as we're getting ready to get started in the weight room, we'll quote it. And some of those guys, like I have a deacon that has been working out with me probably 15 years. And he memorized Philippians, James, 1 Timothy, 1 Peter. I mean, he memorized a bunch of the Bible just by going through, and we do it every single week, show up with 2 verses, and be able to quote them. That's been kind of a neat, that's not a primary thing. It's just been a neat piece of discipleship in our gym.
So is that gym, because you mentioned your daily routine, are they meeting you at your house at 6:30? Like you have them over?
They come to the house, and it's out in the backyard. It was a shed. There's no heat or no air, so we're in the elements. If it's 15 degrees outside, it's terrible. It's terrible. You cover up, and you go out there and lift. And in the winter, in the summertime, it's terribly humid. But it's where we've done it, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about a basic. You don't need that much. If you desire to get strong, you can do it. If you'll do 5 sets of 5 reps of a certain weight, and if you finish those reps, add weight next week, and you do that over the course of time, you're actually going to get stronger. And that's really what I think guys ought to shoot for. We're not going to be bodybuilders. We're not taking off our shirt, doing weird stuff like that. We're not taking drugs. You're not going to take any kind of strange supplement. You just want to be stronger. And that's a pretty simple approach to doing it.
That app that you recommended, Strong Lifts, that's like the 5x5x5, I've used it most of this year and have gotten tremendous benefit from it.
Yeah, it's just real simple. And that app, for instance, is a free app. It keeps track of everything. I write everything down in a notebook because I'm old. But you guys will want to keep it on your phone. And that's a great way to do it. You don't need all of the other strength apps. It's just that now it's boring. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a very exciting way to do it, but it's extremely effective in the amount of time you want to spend. Because we don't have that much time. If you're a pastor and you got a family, you got about an hour you can give to it. I lift weights an hour, 3 days a week. And that's it.
How long have you been lifting weights? Is that something like you did? Did you play sports in high school and that's what got you into it? Or did you start later in life?
Yeah. I'm 50. I'll be 56 in February. So yeah, in high school and then in college, I played football in college as well. And so you had all of that, high school, college, and I just never stopped. And the problem is if I did, if you like to eat, it shows up. And so that's really where the battle is won is what are you putting in your mouth? Now I want to be careful talking about that because I'm a terrible eater. I eat like a toddler. I'm happy with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an orange drink, and some puffed Cheetos for lunch. Happy as I can be with that right there. Yeah, that's right. So I won't be hypocritical talking about health food. I'm not very good at that. But where I would control it is how much of that is going in.
Yeah, well, that's all been good. And, one of the things that Colin mentioned that Strong Lifts is super helpful for me. Told the guys this about a year ago, my weight was between 250, 260, and now I'm down to about 235, 240. Just trying to get into a rhythm of weightlifting and stuff. So, it's been helpful for me, and I hope it'll be helpful for those listening. But Clint, kind of as we wrap up, and we've really enjoyed having you here today, I just got 2 questions for you. I'm going to hit you with the first one. So you've been preaching for how many years now?
Started when I was 23, my first church. That makes what, 34 years?
34 years. All right, well, I'm going to call that my preliminary question. My real first question is, of all the years you've been preaching, what would you say have been some of your favorite books to preach through?
And it feels like every time I get done with one, like I feel like that was my favorite. So I just got done with Mark. I didn't expect that to be that good, honestly. And just, I love preaching through the Gospel of Mark. I felt most accomplished preaching through Romans because I was scared to death of Romans. So I think that's where I felt most accomplished. And I was probably most surprised preaching through Ecclesiastes. And I love preaching through Ecclesiastes. So those 3 books, I put them together. Those have been my favorites so far.
If I remember correctly, Romans, you spent like 2.5 years on it, and you also did that during COVID, didn't you?
Yeah. So we took 2 years, in Genesis, 2 years in Acts, 2 years in Romans, and 2 years in Mark. And I don't think you should do any less than that. Like if I were a better preacher, I could have done more. I'm just not that good of a preacher. So I feel like that was probably the right number, the right length. It was really intimidating. I wanted to do it when I was 40. Then I got scared. I'd mess it up, so I didn't. And I waited till I was 50. And that's when I preached through Romans. When COVID hit, I think we didn't have people coming for like 10 or 11 weeks or something like that. And so it was preaching to an empty room, putting that online. I just kept going through Romans.
Well, then my last question to you would be, this is a podcast, we call it The Rookies because we're 3 rookie pastors. We've only been doing this for 5 years or less, as opposed to you've been doing it for 30 plus. So as we hopefully have listeners who are also in the same stage that we are, what would be just a piece of advice or maybe pieces of advice you'd want to give rookie pastors starting off in their ministries and their pastorates?
A couple of things. One is it always takes longer to do what it is you're trying to do. It just always takes longer than you thought, every single time. You think I'm going to do this in 5, that's 15. I've been here at Hickory Grove, thought maybe it takes 7 years, it's 15. And I'm still doing it. That's one thing. The other is the Lord knows where you are. The Lord knows where you are. The pasture is not greener over there. He knows where you are. Be faithful where you are. You keep doing where you are. God in his good timing will move you to the place where he can use you the most. The other is that God has given you that church. If you can learn to love the church. I'm giving you all this besides the fact you ought to be holy, walk with the Lord, that sort of thing. I'm just talking about ministry. If you can learn to love the church, like those people at that church, it's going to be good for your soul when you're serving them, when you're leading them, and then when they inevitably disappoint you in some weird way. If you can learn to have a deep, God-honoring affection for the church, it can help your family. Your kid's going to grow up in a place where they don't hate the church. Something that's just helped me is to learn to love the church that the Lord has given us to serve.
I do have a follow-up to that with talking about having a deep affection for the church. Do you have any practical tips on how they do that? I know, we pray for them, but is there anything else you've done on top of that to really cultivate that love?
I think building relationships with other people in the church that actually love the church as well. And then in each of your churches, there are going to be people that are hilarious. Like if you can learn to love being with them and have them see some of the humor and what is going on in the church. Sometimes it's gallows humor. I mean, sometimes like we're having a hard time. If you can still have that, that's going to give some longevity for your ministry there, for your own soul, for your attitude, for when you are at home and thinking about it, not being resentful. I have found just building relationships with the right people in the church has been real helpful for me.
Well, Clint, that's really good. I appreciate you so much. We appreciate you and the work you're doing for Southern Baptist, and
thanks, guys,
for being an example of what faithful pastoring and preaching looks like. My prayer is that all 3 of us will be at our churches for 30 years and we'll have the same kind of legacy and story you do. So we appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
I still can't get over the Dungeons and Dragons look you had on your face. Still my favorite thing. But other than that,
sorry, Daniel, I wouldn't have brought that up, Daniel. I would not have brought it up.
Rio brings it up all the time. I'm used to it.
Okay, yeah.
He's just jealous he can't be a part of it. I think that's what it is.
Nah, I got better things to do. But man, we appreciate
Acts 19 at you.
Throw Acts 19. Anyway, well, I don't even know what Colin was trying to get at there, but moving on. Okay. You guys got anything else you want to ask Clint before we get off here? No? Well,
thanks, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having me.
Well,
thank you. Appreciate
you. Thank you guys for listening to this podcast. We greatly enjoyed it. If you would, subscribe, leave us a like, leave us a review. As long as it's 5 stars, anything less than that, please don't leave us a review. 5 stars
right
only.
On.
But we will see you guys in the next episode.
Bye, everybody.